In the far future, humanity had finally reached the stars. Their ships traveled across space, moving from one system to another. They built colonies on distant planets and learned how to survive in places once thought impossible. Humans were no longer alone in their dreams. They were explorers of the galaxy. For many years, they searched for other intelligent life. They sent signals into deep space, hoping someone would answer. But for a long time, there was only silence. Many people started to believe that humanity was truly alone. That belief ended on a quiet day. A deep space station, floating far beyond the edge of human-controlled space, detected something unusual. At first, it looked like a signal. Then it became clear it was a message. Not random noise, not a natural signal, but something structured. Something intelligent. The station crew quickly informed Earth. Within hours, scientists, leaders, and military officers gathered. The message was decoded slowly. It was not just a greeting. It was a transmission filled with data, symbols, and coordinates. It pointed to a meeting place. Humanity had finally made contact. The news spread across Earth and the colonies. People were excited, nervous, and curious. After centuries of searching, they were about to meet another civilization. A ship was chosen for the mission. It was not a warship, but a diplomatic vessel. Its purpose was peace. On board were diplomats, scientists, and translators. They carried gifts, knowledge, culture, and technology to share. The ship traveled for weeks until it reached the coordinates. What they saw left them speechless. A massive fleet was waiting. The alien ships were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They were huge, dark, and perfectly shaped. Their surfaces seemed smooth, almost alive. Lights moved across them in strange patterns. There were hundreds of ships, all silent, all watching. The human ship looked small in comparison. Inside the ship, the crew felt tension. This was not what they expected. They thought they would meet a small group, not an entire fleet. Still, they stayed calm. They were here for peace. A signal came from the alien fleet. It was clear and direct. "Identify yourselves." The human captain took a deep breath and responded. He spoke calmly and with respect. "We are humanity. We come in peace. We wish to learn and share." There was a long pause. Then another message came. "We are the Dominion. You have entered controlled space." The name spread quickly through the human ship. The Dominion. It sounded powerful, organized. Not just a single species, but something larger. The humans sent more information about Earth, their history, their desire for cooperation. They showed images of their world, their cities, and their people. Another pause followed. This time, the reply felt different. "Your species is young. Your technology is limited. Your expansion is inefficient." The words were cold. Inside the ship, the mood changed. This was not a friendly tone. It was not curiosity. It was judgment. The human captain remained calm. "We are still learning. That is why we seek others. Together, we can grow stronger." For a moment, there was silence again. Then the Dominion responded. "We do not require your help." The alien fleet began to move. Not aggressively, but with purpose. Ships shifted positions, forming patterns. It felt like a show of power. The human crew watched carefully. Another message arrived. "You will submit to Dominion authority. Your worlds will be integrated. Your resources will be controlled." The room went quiet. This was not first contact. This was a demand. The human captain looked at his crew. Some were shocked. Others were angry. But no one spoke. Everyone understood the weight of the moment. He turned back to the communication system. "Submission is not acceptable," he said clearly. "We came for peace, not control." There was no hesitation in the reply. "Then you are a threat." The temperature inside the room seemed to drop. Outside, the massive alien ships held their positions. Silent. Watching. The human ship stood alone. The captain knew this moment would shape the future. One wrong move could start something terrible. But giving in was not an option. He sent one final message. "Humanity will not bow." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the Dominion fleet powered up. Energy began to build across their ships. Weapons, far more advanced than anything humans had seen, came online. The human crew felt it immediately. This was not over. The captain gave the order to retreat. The ship turned and prepared to leave. They had done what they came to do. Now they had to return and warn Earth. As the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, one thought stayed in every mind. Humanity was no longer alone, and the galaxy was not friendly. The human ship returned to Earth with urgency. Its engines pushed to their limits, crossing the vast distance faster than ever before. Inside, the crew remained silent. No one celebrated the success of first contact. There was nothing to celebrate. They had not found friends. They had found a threat. When the ship finally arrived in Earth's orbit, the message was already waiting. Leaders from across the planet had gathered. Military commanders, scientists, and diplomats sat together in one large council chamber. The air was heavy with tension. The captain stepped forward and began his report. He explained everything: the Dominion fleet, their advanced ships, their cold words, and their demand. As he spoke, the room grew quieter. Every detail made the situation worse. "They didn't come to talk," the captain said at last. "They came to control." A deep silence followed. One leader stood up. His voice was calm, but firm. "And if we refuse?" The captain did not hesitate. "Then we are a threat to them." The meaning was clear. War. The council began to argue. Some believed humanity was not ready to fight such a powerful enemy. The Dominion had hundreds of ships at the meeting point alone. Their technology was far ahead. Fighting them could mean total destruction. Others disagreed. "We cannot surrender," one commander said. "If we bow now, we lose everything: our freedom, our future." A scientist added, "If they control our resources, they control us. We will never grow, never evolve. We will become slaves." The debate continued for hours. Some suggested sending another message. Maybe they could negotiate. Maybe the Dominion would accept limited cooperation instead of full control. Others believed that was a mistake. "They already made their position clear," a military officer said. "They don't see us as equals." At last, the council reached a decision. Humanity would not surrender. A message would be sent back to the Dominion. Short, clear, final. The best communication experts worked together to choose the right words. It had to show strength, but not fear. It had to be simple so there was no misunderstanding. When the message was ready, the entire council approved it. The transmission was sent across space. "We do not kneel." The words traveled through the stars, heading toward the Dominion. Now, all humanity could do was wait. Days passed. Then, the reply came. It arrived not just as a signal, but as a broadcast powerful enough to reach every human colony. Screens across Earth and distant worlds lit up at the same time. The Dominion wanted to be heard by everyone. The message began: "Humanity has refused integration." The voice was cold and emotionless. "You have chosen defiance." Images appeared on the screens: massive Dominion fleets, countless ships stretching across space. Their power was clear. "Your species lacks the strength to resist. Your expansion will end. Your systems will be claimed." People across human space watched in silence. Fear spread quickly. This was no longer a distant problem. This was real. The message continued. "You are given one final choice." A pause followed, long enough to let the words sink in. "Submit within one standard cycle, or face total eradication." The broadcast ended. No attack followed. Not yet. The Dominion had given humanity time, but not much. One cycle. That was all. Back on Earth, the council met again. This time, there was no argument. The threat was clear. The Dominion had shown their power and their intent. "What do we do?" someone asked. The answer came quickly. "We prepare." Across human space, everything changed. Factories that once built civilian ships switched to military production. Scientists worked day and night, pushing technology further than ever before. Old defense systems were reactivated. New ones were designed. Colonies strengthened their shields. Fleets were recalled to key positions. Every system prepared for war. But something else happened too. People did not panic. They did not run. Instead, they stood together. Messages spread across networks, across planets, across space itself. Not messages of fear, but of unity. We will not fall. We will fight. We are humanity. The days passed quickly. The deadline moved closer. Some still hoped the Dominion would change their mind, that maybe at the last moment they would choose peace. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Peace was never an option. As the final hours of the cycle approached, all eyes turned to the stars. The Dominion fleet would return, and this time they would not come to talk. They would come to end humanity. But humanity had made its choice. They would not kneel, even if it meant facing the fire of war. The final hour of the Dominion's ultimatum came and passed. Across human space, every sensor was active. Defense stations waited in silence. Fleets held their positions near key systems. On Earth, millions watched the skies, knowing something was about to happen. For a brief moment, nothing changed. Then the alarms began. A deep space monitoring station near the outer edge of human territory detected multiple signals. At first, the readings were unclear. Then they became sharp and precise. Warp signatures. Not one, not 10. Hundreds. The Dominion had arrived. The information spread instantly across human networks. Command centers lit up with activity. Officers shouted orders. Screens filled with red markers as enemy fleets appeared across multiple systems at the same time. This was not a single attack. It was a full invasion. The first strike hit a distant mining colony. It was small, lightly defended, and far from Earth. The Dominion ships entered orbit without warning. The colony never had a chance. Bright beams of energy fell from the sky. Buildings were destroyed in seconds. Defense systems tried to respond, but they were too weak. The shields collapsed almost instantly. Within minutes, the colony was gone. No survivors. The Dominion moved on without slowing down. Next came a larger target, a growing human settlement with stronger defenses. This time, the humans fought back. Orbital cannons fired at the incoming ships. Missiles launched in waves. Fighter ships rushed forward to intercept the enemy. For a moment, it seemed like they could hold. But the Dominion fleet was too powerful. Their shields absorbed most of the attacks. Their weapons were faster, stronger, and more accurate. Human ships were destroyed one by one. Explosions filled the space around the planet. The battle lasted less than an hour. Then it was over. The settlement fell. Across human space, the same story repeated again and again. Outer colonies were hit first. The Dominion targeted weaker systems, destroying them quickly before moving deeper. They showed no mercy, no warnings, no hesitation. Their goal was clear: break humanity fast. On Earth, the Council watched the reports come in. Each message was worse than the last. Entire populations were gone. Fleets had been wiped out. Defenses had failed. A heavy silence filled the room. One commander spoke quietly. "They're testing us." Another nodded. "They're seeing how we respond." The captain from the first contact mission stood near the center of the room. His face was calm, but his eyes showed anger. "They think we're weak," he said. "They think we'll fall apart." A leader looked at him. "Are they wrong?" The captain did not answer immediately. He watched the screen, where another colony had just gone silent. Then he spoke. "No," he said. "But they don't understand us yet." Far from Earth, a human fleet finally engaged the Dominion in a larger battle. It was humanity's first real attempt to stop the invasion. The fleet moved into position, forming defensive lines. Ships worked together, covering each other, firing in coordinated attacks. When the Dominion arrived, the battle began instantly. Space lit up with energy blasts and explosions. Human ships fought with everything they had. They used every tactic, every weapon, every advantage they could find. And for a moment they held. Several Dominion ships were damaged. One even exploded under heavy fire. It was the first small victory. But it did not last. More Dominion ships arrived. Their numbers kept growing. Their formations shifted smoothly, adapting to every human move. Slowly, the human fleet began to fall apart. Ships were destroyed one after another. Communication lines broke. The formation collapsed. The commander of the fleet knew the truth. They could not win. He gave the final order: retreat. The remaining ships pulled back, jumping out of the system as fast as they could. Many did not make it. The Dominion did not chase them. They didn't need to. They had already won. By the end of the first day, several human colonies were gone. Millions had died. Entire fleets had been destroyed. Across human space, fear began to spread. The Dominion was stronger than expected. Much stronger. On Earth, people watched the news in silence.
Some cried.
Some sat still, unable to react. Others looked up at the sky, wondering if their world would be next. But even in the fear, something else began to grow. Anger. Humanity had offered peace. They had reached out with open hands. And this was the answer: destruction. Back in the council chamber, the leaders made a decision. They would not rush into another battle. They would not waste their remaining strength. Instead, they would wait.
Prepare. Adapt.
The Dominion believed the war was already decided. They believed humanity would fall quickly. But they were wrong. Humanity was learning, and they were not done fighting. After the first strikes, the war did not slow down. The Dominion fleets continued their advance through human space. One system after another fell. Outer colonies were erased, their names turning into empty records. Survivors were few, and those who escaped carried stories of destruction. But something strange began to happen. Earth went silent. No major fleets moved out. No large counterattacks were launched. The strong defense systems around Earth stayed active, but they did not strike back. It was as if humanity had chosen to hide instead of fight. Across the Dominion command networks, this silence was noticed. "They have stopped responding," one Dominion officer reported. A higher commander watched the data carefully. Human signals had dropped. Fleet movements had become minimal. Only small groups of ships moved between systems, often avoiding direct conflict. "They are retreating," another officer said. "They have accepted defeat." The Dominion leaders considered this possibility. To them, it made sense. Humanity was weaker. Their technology was behind. Their losses were growing every hour. It was only natural that they would try to survive instead of fight. "They will surrender soon," the commander said. "Continue the advance." The Dominion fleets pushed forward. They reached deeper into human territory, but something felt different now. The battles were fewer. Some systems were empty. Others had been abandoned before the Dominion arrived. It was not chaos. It was planned. Back on Earth, things were far from quiet. Deep beneath the surface, hidden from space, massive facilities were active. Engineers, scientists, and workers moved constantly. Machines operated without rest. New ships were being built at a speed never seen before. These were not normal ships. They were different. Stronger.
Faster. Smarter.
In orbit, large stations worked in silence. From a distance, they looked inactive. But inside, they were alive with activity. New weapons were being tested. Advanced systems were being prepared. Humanity was not hiding. They were preparing. Inside one of the underground command centers, the same captain from the first contact stood with a group of military leaders. A large screen showed the current state of the war. Red zones marked lost systems. Yellow showed contested areas. Green marked the remaining strongholds. The red zones were growing. "We're losing too much," one officer said quietly. "Yes," the captain replied. "But that was expected." The officer looked at him. "Expected." The captain nodded. "We knew we couldn't match them in a direct fight."
"Not yet."
Another leader stepped forward. "So we let them win?" "No," the captain said firmly. "We let them believe they're winning." The room fell silent. On the screen, Dominion fleets moved deeper into human space, spreading out as they advanced. "They're getting comfortable," the captain continued. "They're dividing their forces. They think we're broken."
He pointed at the map.
"That's when they become weak." Far away, in one of the remaining human systems, a small group of Dominion ships entered orbit. They expected no resistance. But something unexpected happened. The system was not empty. Hidden platforms activated suddenly. Defense cannons opened fire from multiple directions. Small human ships appeared from behind moons and asteroids. The Dominion ships were caught off guard. For a brief moment they struggled, but the attack ended quickly. The human forces pulled back just as fast as they appeared. The Dominion ships survived, but they were damaged. The commander of the Dominion fleet frowned. "This is unusual," he said. "It was a minor resistance," another officer replied. "Nothing significant." But the commander was not convinced. "They're still fighting," he said, "even after such losses." Back on Earth, reports of these small attacks came in. They were not victories, but they were not defeats either. They were tests. Humanity was watching, learning, adapting. Each small battle provided new data. Each encounter revealed more about the Dominion's strengths and their weaknesses. Days passed. The Dominion continued their advance, but their speed slowed slightly. They became more careful, more alert. Still, they believed the outcome would not change. Earth remained silent. No large fleet had come out to face them. No major counterattack had been launched. To the Dominion, it was simple. Humanity was delaying the inevitable. But deep inside Earth's hidden facilities, something was growing. Something powerful. Something the Dominion had not seen before. The silence was not weakness. It was control. It was patience. And when the time came, that silence would break. Not with words, but with fire. The silence of Earth continued, but it was no longer empty. Beneath the surface of the planet, deep inside hidden facilities, something powerful was taking shape. Massive chambers stretched for miles. Machines moved without stopping. Sparks of energy lit the darkness as new systems came online. Humanity was building, not just more ships, something better. For years, even before first contact, human scientists had worked in secret. They knew one day they might meet something stronger, something dangerous.
So they prepared for that day.
Now that day had come. Inside one of the underground centers, a group of engineers stood around a large structure. It was not a normal ship. It had no windows, no visible crew areas. Its surface was smooth and dark, almost like the Dominion vessels. One engineer looked at it with quiet pride. "First unit is ready," he said. A commander beside him nodded. "Activated." The room became still. Then the machine powered on. Lights moved across its surface. Systems came alive one by one. But there was no human pilot inside. This ship did not need one. It was controlled by an advanced artificial intelligence, far beyond anything used before. It could think, react, and adapt faster than any human. It was a new kind of weapon. And it was only the beginning. In orbit above Earth, hidden shipyards began to reveal their true purpose. Sections of space that once looked empty now opened up. Massive fleets, built in secret, started to move. These ships were different from the older human fleets. They were faster, stronger, and designed for war. Across the command network, signals were sent out. Orders moved quickly between systems. Human forces that had been hiding now began to reposition. The time of silence was ending. In one of the command rooms, the captain from the first contact mission stood watching a live feed. His expression was calm, but focused. "We've waited long enough," he said. A nearby officer looked at him. "Are we ready?" The captain did not answer right away. He watched as another group of ships left Earth's orbit. Then he spoke. "We don't need to be perfect," he said. "We just need to be better than them." Far from Earth, a Dominion fleet moved through a recently captured system. They had faced little resistance in the past few days. Most human forces had disappeared. To them, it felt like the war was almost over. The commander of the fleet stood on the bridge of a ship, watching the empty space ahead. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Scanning," an officer replied. A moment passed. Then the officer frowned. "I'm detecting multiple signals." The commander turned. "Human ships?" "Yes, but they're not matching previous designs." Before he could respond, space around them shifted. Human ships appeared. Not a few. Hundreds. They came out of hidden positions behind moons inside asteroid fields and from stealth zones that had gone unnoticed before. The Dominion fleet was surrounded. "Prepare for combat," the commander shouted. But it was already too late. The human ships moved first. Their attacks were fast and precise. Energy weapons struck the Dominion ships before they could fully activate their defenses. Missiles hit key points, targeting weak areas. The Dominion ships tried to respond, but something was wrong. Their targeting systems struggled. The human ships were moving unpredictably, changing direction in ways that made them hard to track. And then the AI ships joined the fight. They moved even faster than the rest. Their reactions were instant. They avoided attacks with perfect timing and struck back without hesitation. One Dominion ship exploded, then another. The fleet began to break formation. "This is not possible," one Dominion officer said in shock. But it was happening. The humans were no longer fighting the same way. They were faster, smarter, more dangerous. The battle did not last long. Within a short time, the Dominion fleet was destroyed. Not a single ship escaped. Back on Earth, the command center received the report. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone spoke. "We did it." The captain shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "This is just the beginning." Across human space, similar attacks began to happen. Small Dominion fleets were targeted and destroyed. Supply lines were hit. Communication networks were disrupted. The Dominion was no longer advancing easily. For the first time since the war began, they were losing. Confusion spread through their ranks. Reports came in from multiple systems. Unknown human ships. Advanced weapons. Fleet losses increasing. The Dominion leaders listened carefully. Something had changed. Humanity was no longer silent. They had awakened. And now they were fighting back. Not with desperation, but with purpose. The war had entered a new phase. And this time, humanity was ready. The war had changed. For many days, the Dominion had moved forward without fear. They destroyed human colonies and pushed deeper into their space. They believed victory was close. But now, everything was different. Human ships were no longer running. They were hunting. Across multiple star systems, Dominion fleets began to disappear. Some were found destroyed. Others simply went silent, leaving no signal behind. At first, the Dominion thought it was a mistake. But the reports kept coming. Fleet lost. Supply convoy destroyed. Communication relay down. The losses were growing. Inside a Dominion command ship, tension filled the air. Officers stood still, watching the latest reports appear on the screen. "This is not random," one officer said. "These attacks are planned." The fleet commander looked at the data. His expression was cold, but there was something new in his eyes. Concern. "They are targeting weak points," he said. "Supply lines, isolated fleets, outer systems." Another officer spoke carefully. "The humans are adapting." The commander did not like that answer. "They should not be capable of this level of coordination," he said. "Not after the damage we cause." But the evidence was clear. Humanity was not only surviving. They were learning fast. Far away, in a dark region of space filled with asteroids, a Dominion supply convoy moved slowly. Large transport ships carried resources taken from captured human worlds. A small group of warships protected them. The convoy had passed through this route many times without trouble. Today was different. Hidden among the asteroids, human ships waited. They remained completely still, their systems quiet. Even advanced Dominion sensors could not detect them. Inside one of the human ships, a young officer watched the convoy approach. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. "Hold position," the commander said calmly. The ships did not move. The convoy came closer. Closer. "Now," the commander said. In an instant, the silence broke. Human ships powered up and attacked. Energy weapons fired from multiple directions. Missiles launched in waves, striking the transport ships first. The Dominion escorts tried to respond, but they were too slow. The AI ships moved like shadows. They avoided enemy fire with perfect timing and struck key targets without hesitation. One escort ship exploded before it could even lock onto a target. The convoy was in chaos. "Defend the transports," a Dominion officer shouted. But it was useless. Human ships focused on the transports, destroying them one by one. Supplies burned in space. Resources meant for the Dominion war effort were lost in seconds. The remaining Dominion warships tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Within minutes, the convoy was gone. The human ships did not stay. As quickly as they appeared, they disappeared again into the asteroid field. No trace left behind. Back in Dominion-controlled space, the impact was immediate. Supply shortages began to appear. Frontline fleets reported delays. Some operations had to be stopped. For the first time, the Dominion advance slowed down. On Earth, the command center watched it all. A large map showed the results of the counterattacks. Red zones were no longer growing as fast. In some areas, they were even shrinking. "We're pushing them back," an officer said. The captain stood quietly, studying the map. "Not yet," he replied. "We're hurting them." "That's different." Another commander stepped forward. "Their supply lines are breaking. If we keep this up, they won't be able to maintain their fleets." The captain nodded slightly. "That's the plan." He looked at the room. "We don't fight them where they are strong," he said. "We fight them where they are weak." Across human space, this strategy continued. Small, fast fleets struck isolated targets. Communication relays were destroyed, making it harder for Dominion forces to coordinate. Hidden bases launched surprise attacks and then vanished again. The Dominion tried to adapt. They increased patrols. They grouped their ships into larger fleets. They became more careful. But it was not enough. The humans were always one step ahead. They changed tactics constantly. They never stayed in one place. They used every part of space, asteroids, moons, even debris fields as cover. The war was no longer simple. It was no longer one-sided. Inside the Dominion command, frustration began to grow. "They are avoiding direct battle," one officer said. "They strike and disappear." The commander clenched his hand slightly. "Then force them into battle," he said. "Find their main fleet." But that was the problem. There was no single main fleet. Human forces were everywhere. And nowhere. They had turned the entire battlefield into a trap. Back on Earth, the captain watched another report come in. Another Dominion fleet destroyed. He allowed himself a small breath.
"This is working," someone said.
The captain looked at the stars on the screen. "Yes," he said quietly, "but they're starting to understand." The room fell silent, because everyone knew what that meant. The Dominion would not stay confused forever. Soon, they would change their strategy. And when they did, the war would become even more dangerous. But for now, humanity had taken control of the fight. The counterattack had begun. And the Dominion was no longer untouchable. The war was no longer limited to a few systems. It had spread across the stars. What started as a one-sided invasion had now turned into a wide and dangerous conflict. Human forces were no longer hiding or only striking small targets. They were pushing deeper, hitting important Dominion systems. The battlefield had grown. And so had the risk. Across space, both sides moved constantly. Fleets crossed paths, clashed, and vanished again. No system felt safe anymore. Even areas once controlled fully by the Dominion were now under threat. For the first time, the war touched their core regions. Inside one of the Dominion command centers, tension was rising. Large screens showed multiple conflict zones. Red markers now appeared inside their own territory. "This is unacceptable," one officer said sharply. "They are attacking our inner systems." Another added, "Their reach is increasing. They're not just defending anymore." The fleet commander stood still, watching the data. "They are changing the shape of the war," he said slowly. And he was right. Humanity had stopped reacting. Now they were acting. Far from Earth, a human strike group moved toward a heavily defended Dominion outpost. This was not a small target. It was a major hub used for communication and supply. Destroying it would hurt the Dominion badly. Inside the lead ship, the commander studied the plan. Around him, officers prepared for battle. "This will not be easy," one of them said. The commander nodded. "It doesn't need to be easy," he replied. "It just needs to work." The fleet moved into position. Instead of attacking directly, they split into smaller groups. Some ships moved wide, creating false signals. Others stayed hidden, waiting for the right moment. The Dominion outpost detected the movement. Multiple contacts incoming, a Dominion officer reported. Prepare defenses, the commander ordered. Weapons powered up. Defense platforms activated. The outpost was ready. But the human attack did not come from one direction. It came from everywhere. Ships appeared suddenly from blind spots. Missiles struck defense platforms before they could fully respond. Communication towers were hit first, cutting off coordination. The Dominion forces tried to regroup, but confusion spread quickly. The human ships did not stay still. They moved constantly, changing positions, striking and pulling back. Their attacks were not random, they were precise. Every target had a purpose. The AI ships led the most dangerous strikes. They moved faster than anything the Dominion had seen before, avoiding fire and hitting critical systems with perfect timing. One by one, the outpost defenses failed. Explosions spread across the station. Within a short time, the outpost was destroyed. The human fleet did not celebrate. They left immediately. Back in Dominion space, the loss was clear. That was a major hub, one officer said in disbelief. How did they break through so easily? The commander did not answer right away, because he knew the truth. They are not stronger than us, he said finally. They are smarter. That realization spread quickly. The Dominion began to feel something new: pressure. At the same time, humanity faced its own challenges. The war was growing larger. More systems were involved. More resources were needed. Human fleets were stretched across long distances. Losses still happened. Ships were destroyed.
Crews were lost.
In one system, a human fleet faced a larger Dominion force. The battle was intense. Human ships fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered. Fall back, the commander ordered. Some ships escaped. Others did not. The cost of war was real. Back on Earth, reports showed both victories and losses. The situation was improving, but it was far from safe. An officer looked at the captain. We're pushing them, but we're also spreading ourselves thin. The captain nodded. Yes, he said. That's the danger. Another leader spoke. If they find a weak point, they could hit us hard. The captain looked at the map of the galaxy. That's why we don't give them one, he said. Humanity adjusted again. They improved coordination between fleets. They shared data faster. Every battle, win or lose, was studied carefully. They were learning at a speed the Dominion could not match. Across space, the war continued to expand. More systems became battle zones. More fleets clashed. The line between human space and Dominion space began to blur. There was no clear front anymore. Only conflict. Inside a Dominion warship, the commander stood quietly. They should have fallen by now, an officer said. But they didn't, the commander replied. He looked at the latest reports. Human attacks were increasing. Their strategies were changing faster than expected. They fight like this is survival, he said. The officer hesitated. Isn't it? The commander did not respond, because deep down he understood something important. For the Dominion, this war was about control. For humanity, it was something else. It was about existence. And that made them far more dangerous. Back on Earth, the captain watched another human fleet jump into battle. The war was growing, and there was no turning back now. Humanity had stepped into the fire, and they were not afraid to burn. The war had reached a point no one had expected. The Dominion was no longer certain of victory. For a long time, they had believed they were unstoppable. Every civilization they had faced before had fallen quickly. Some surrendered. Others were destroyed. None had fought like this. None had survived this long. But humanity was different. Across Dominion space, reports continued to arrive. Fleets destroyed. Outposts lost. Supply lines broken. Systems once considered safe were now under attack. Inside a major Dominion command center, the atmosphere had changed. The calm confidence from before was gone. In its place was tension. And something else.
Doubt.
An officer stepped forward, holding a data pad. His voice was steady, but there was concern behind it. We have lost contact with 3 fleets in the last cycle, he said. All of them were operating in secure regions. Another officer added, our patrols are increasing, but it's not enough. The humans keep finding ways around them. The High Commander stood in silence, looking at the large display in front of him. Red warning markers were appearing in places that had never been threatened before. How? One officer asked. Their numbers are smaller. Their technology was weaker. How are they doing this? No one answered immediately, because no one had a simple answer. Far away, in a quiet Dominion system, a fleet was moving through open space. They were cautious now, scanning constantly for hidden threats. We should not be this deep without support, one officer said. The fleet commander replied, Orders are clear. We secure this system. Before the officer could respond, the sensors reacted. Multiple contacts detected. The commander turned quickly. Where? Everywhere. Human ships appeared from all directions. They did not rush forward like before. They moved in controlled patterns, spreading out, cutting off escape routes. The Dominion fleet tried to regroup, but something felt wrong. The human ships were not attacking immediately. They were watching, waiting. Hold formation, the commander ordered. Prepare for engagement. Seconds passed. Then the attack began. It was sudden and overwhelming. Human ships struck with perfect timing. Their fire was focused and precise, hitting key points in the Dominion formation. Communication ships were destroyed first. Then the command vessels. The fleet began to lose coordination. Regroup, the commander shouted. But the orders came too late. The AI-controlled ships moved through the chaos like shadows. They avoided incoming fire with impossible precision and struck back instantly. Dominion ships exploded one after another. The fleet tried to escape, but they were already surrounded. Within minutes, it was over. No survivors. Back in the command center, the report came in. The room went silent. Another fleet gone. Another loss. The High Commander slowly turned away from the display. They are hunting us, he said quietly. The words felt heavy, because they were true. Across Dominion space, the same feeling began to spread. Fear. Not panic. Not yet, but something close. For the first time, Dominion officers began to hesitate. They double-checked their orders. They questioned movements into unknown systems. They became careful. Humanity had changed the balance. Back on Earth, the situation looked different. The command center showed signs of progress. Human forces were holding more ground. Some lost systems were even being taken back.
But the mood was not relaxed.
The captain stood near the center of the room, watching the data. We're pushing them hard, an officer said. They're starting to pull back in some areas. The captain nodded. Yes, he said. They're feeling it now. Another leader stepped forward. If we keep this pressure, we might force them into retreat. The captain looked at the map again. Maybe, he said. Or maybe they'll do something else. The room grew quiet, because everyone understood what that meant. The Dominion was not weak. They were adjusting, just like humanity had done before. Far away, in a deep Dominion stronghold, high-ranking leaders gathered. This was not a normal meeting. The situation had become serious. We underestimated them, one leader admitted. Another added, their ability to adapt is beyond expectations. A third spoke in a low voice, they do not fight like other species. The main commander looked at all of them. Then we change our approach, he said. How? Someone asked. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly. We stop treating them as a minor threat. He paused. We treat them as equals. The room went still. That decision changed everything, because it meant the Dominion would no longer hold back. They would use their full strength, their best fleets, their most powerful weapons. The war was about to become even more dangerous. Back on Earth, the captain looked up at the stars. They're going to hit back, he said quietly. No one argued, because they knew it was true. The Dominion had felt fear, and now they would respond, not with caution, but with everything they had. The war was far from over. In fact, it was only getting worse. The Dominion had changed. They were no longer fighting with confidence alone. Now they were fighting with purpose and anger. After suffering heavy losses, the Dominion leadership made a decision. They would stop treating humanity as a minor threat. Instead, they would bring out their full strength. And they did. Across human space, new reports began to arrive. Large Dominion fleets were moving again. But this time, they were not scattered. They were organized, massive, and focused. New signatures detected. An officer reported in Human Command Center. These are not small fleets. These are full battle groups. The captain stood in front of the main display, watching the data appear. How many? He asked. The officer hesitated. More than before, much more. A heavy silence filled the room. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Far from Earth, a human-controlled system sat quietly. It was a growing industrial world, producing ships and weapons for the war effort. It was important, and it was now the target. The Dominion fleet arrived without warning. Hundreds of ships filled the sky. They did not wait. They attacked immediately. Energy beams struck the planet from orbit. Defense shields activated, trying to absorb the damage. Ground-based weapons fired back, targeting the attacking ships. For a moment, the defenses held. But only for a moment. The Dominion ships increased their attack. More weapons fired. The shields began to weaken. Then they broke. Explosions spread across the surface. Factories were hit. Shipyards destroyed. Power stations collapsed. The sky turned bright with fire. Inside the command center of the planet, officers tried to coordinate defense. But communication lines were being cut. We are losing shield control. Evacuate the lower sectors. Request reinforcements. But no reinforcements arrived. The Dominion had chosen this system carefully. They had blocked escape routes, trapped the defenders, and now they were finishing the job. On the surface, people rushed to evacuation zones. Some made it. Many did not. The destruction continued. Not for minutes, but for hours. By the end, the system was silent, burned, destroyed. The Dominion fleet did not stop there. They moved to the next target. And then the next. This was no longer a simple invasion.
It was a campaign.
A wave of destruction spreading through human space. Back on Earth, the command center was filled with tension. Reports came in one after another. System lost. Fleet destroyed. Communication broken. The map on the main screen began to change quickly. Red zones were growing again. Much faster than before. This is different, one officer said. The captain nodded slowly.
Yes.
This is their response. Another leader looked at the data in shock. They are not just attacking, they are erasing systems. The room fell quiet, because that was the truth. The Dominion was not just trying to win. They were trying to break humanity, destroy their resources, shatter their networks, and remove their ability to fight back. Meanwhile, human fleets were rushing to respond. In one region, a group of human ships arrived just in time to intercept a Dominion fleet. The battle was intense. Both sides exchanged heavy fire. Ships were damaged. Explosions filled space. Human ships fought with everything they had. But the Dominion fleet was larger, stronger, more aggressive. Hold the line, the human commander shouted. His fleet resisted as long as possible. But slowly, they were pushed back. Then the order came. Fall back. Reluctantly, the human ships retreated. The Dominion held the system. But it was not an easy victory. They had taken damage. Heavy damage. Still, the message was clear. The Dominion was now fighting at full force. Back on Earth, the captain watched the reports. We're being forced back in some areas, an officer said. The captain responded calmly. That's expected. The officer looked at him. Expected? Yes, the captain said. This is what happens when they stop holding back.
He paused.
But so do we. The room stayed silent, because everyone understood what that meant. The war would become even more dangerous. More systems would fall. More lives would be lost. But humanity would not stop. Because now there was no turning back. The Dominion had crossed a line. And humanity had seen enough. As the reports continued to arrive, one thing became clear. The galaxy was burning. But the fire was no longer one-sided. Humanity was still fighting. And they were preparing for something bigger. Something the Dominion would not expect. Something that would change everything again. The war had reached its most dangerous point. Both sides were no longer holding back. The Dominion had launched full-scale attacks, destroying human systems one after another. At the same time, humanity had stopped hiding. Their fleets moved openly now, ready to defend what remained. The battlefield was bigger than ever. And both sides knew one thing. This war would not end quickly. Inside the Dominion Command Center, the situation had become serious. Reports showed heavy losses, but also strong progress in their main objective, breaking human resistance. "We have pushed them back to key systems," one officer said. Another added, "If we take those systems, their ability to produce ships will drop significantly." The High Commander looked at the map. Large sections of human space were now marked in red.
But there were still important systems standing.
Earth, and a few heavily defended worlds. "Focus all fleets on the core regions," the commander ordered. "We end this war here." Across Dominion space, fleets began to gather. This was no longer a scattered war. It was a final move. The largest Dominion armada ever assembled began to move toward the remaining human strongholds. Ships from different sectors joined together, forming one massive force. Their target was clear: humanity's heart, Earth. On the other side, humanity prepared as well. In a deep space command center near Earth, the atmosphere was tense. Officers worked quickly, checking systems, updating fleet positions, and preparing defenses. The captain stood in front of the main screen, watching the incoming data. "They're coming," an officer said. The captain nodded.
Yes.
All of them. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Every ship available was being gathered. Every weapon ready. Every system active. Earth was surrounded by layers of defense. But even with all that, the human forces knew the truth. This would be the hardest battle yet. Far from Earth, the Dominion armada moved forward. As they approached human space, they encountered resistance immediately. Human fleets moved in to intercept.
The battle began.
And this time it was massive. Thousands of ships on both sides filled the void of space. Energy weapons fired in every direction. Explosions lit up the darkness, like stars. Human ships fought with coordination. They worked together, covering each other, striking at key targets. The AI ships played a major role. They moved fast, hitting weak points in the Dominion fleet, disrupting their formations. But the Dominion was not weak. They fought with equal strength. Their ships were powerful, their weapons deadly, and their numbers overwhelming. For every Dominion ship destroyed, others pushed forward. The human fleet began to feel the pressure. "Hold position," the commander shouted. "We are losing ground," another officer reported. The battle was intense. Ships were destroyed on both sides. Debris floated through space. Explosions shook entire formations. And yet, neither side gave up. Back on Earth, civilians watched the reports. The sky above the planet was filled with defense ships. The ground was prepared for worst-case scenarios. People were scared, but they did not run. They stayed together because they knew what this fight meant. This was not just about one system. It was about survival. Back in space, the battle reached its peak. Human ships pushed forward with everything they had. The Dominion armada was slowing down. They were taking losses, heavy losses. The commander of the Dominion fleet watched the battle carefully.
"This is it," he said.
"Their final defense." He gave the order. "Break through." The Dominion fleets concentrated their attack. Their weapons focused on a single point in the human formation. The pressure increased. Human ships began to fall back. Slowly, step by step. But they did not break. "Reinforce the center," the human captain ordered. More ships moved into position. The battle continued.
Long,
brutal, relentless. Both sides pushed to their limits, neither willing to lose. After what felt like endless time, the Dominion fleet finally broke through part of the human defense line. They were getting closer, closer to Earth. Inside the command center, the tension reached its highest point. The captain watched the approaching enemy fleet. "This is the final stand," he said quietly. No one spoke. Everyone understood. If they failed here, there would be nothing left to defend. The Dominion armada continued forward. Humanity's last line of defense stood ready. And as both sides prepared for the final clash, the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The final battle had begun. The Dominion Armada pushed forward with full strength, breaking through the last outer defenses of humanity. Their massive fleet moved like a wave, covering the space with ships, weapons, and energy fire. But humanity was waiting, and they were ready. Near Earth, the remaining human fleets gathered for one last defense. Every ship that could fight was there. Every system that could help was active. This was not just a battle anymore. It was the end of the war. Inside the human command center, the captain stood still, watching the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. The room was quiet, but the tension was heavy. "They are closing in," an officer said. The captain nodded. "Then we do what we came here to do." He turned to the crew. "Hold the line." The order was simple and final. Outside, space turned into chaos. The Dominion Armada fired with everything they had. Powerful energy beams cut across space. Entire sections of the human defense line were hit at once. Ships exploded. Shields flickered under pressure. But the human response was immediate. Every remaining ship moved into position. Weapons fired back with precision. Missiles, energy blasts, and rail shots struck the incoming Dominion forces. The AI ships led the counterattack. They moved faster than any human pilot could, avoiding incoming fire and striking at key enemy targets. Their movements were perfect, almost impossible to predict. One by one, Dominion ships began to fall. But the Dominion did not stop. Their numbers were still massive. They pushed harder, closer. The battle grew more intense. Space filled with debris and light. Explosions echoed across the void. Entire formations collapsed and reformed. Both sides fought with everything they had left. On Earth, people watched the sky. From the surface, the battle was visible as distant flashes of light. Children held onto their families. Soldiers stood ready. Scientists monitored the situation with tense silence. Everyone knew this was the end. Back in space, the human fleet began to push forward. "We're breaking their formation," an officer reported. The captain watched carefully. "Keep going. Do not give them space to regroup." The Dominion commander saw it too. His fleet was losing structure. The humans were not just defending anymore. They were pushing back. "This is impossible," one Dominion officer said. "They should be collapsing." But they weren't. Humanity was standing strong. The Dominion commander made a decision. "Full assault," he ordered. All remaining ships focused their attack. Every weapon fired at once. For a moment, it seemed like the human defense might break. Ships were destroyed. Formations were damaged. The pressure increased. But then, something changed. The human fleets regrouped. And then, they struck back with full force. A coordinated attack moved through the Dominion Armada like a wave. Human ships targeted critical points. Supply ships. Command vessels. Communication hubs. The Dominion fleet began to fall apart. Ship by ship. System by system. Their control weakened. Their formation broke. "Fall back," the Dominion commander ordered. But there was nowhere to go. The humans had already closed the gap. The battle turned quickly. What once looked like a Dominion victory now became their downfall. Human ships pushed forward with determination. This was no longer defense. It was the final strike. Explosions spread across the Dominion fleet. Ships were destroyed in large numbers. Their once powerful armada began to collapse. Back in the command center, the captain watched the scene. His expression was calm, but his eyes showed the weight of everything they had gone through. "Status?" he asked. An officer checked the data. "They're breaking," he said. Another officer looked up in disbelief. "We're winning." The captain did not smile. He simply nodded. "Finish it." The human fleet continued forward. There was no hesitation, no pause. They pressed the attack until the Dominion forces could no longer respond. One final push. And then, silence. The Dominion Armada was destroyed. What remained of their fleet scattered or fell silent across space. The war was over. Or, at least, the battle was. Back on Earth, the sky grew quiet again. The lights faded. The explosion stopped. The stars returned. But nothing would ever be the same. Humanity had survived. They had fought. And they had won. But the cost was heavy. Entire systems lost. Millions gone. And a war that changed everything. The captain stood alone for a moment, looking out into space. "We asked for peace," he said quietly. Then he turned away. "And they gave us war." Now, all that remained was what came next. The war had ended. Silence returned to the void of space. But it was not the same silence as before. The galaxy had changed. Entire systems lay in ruins. Planets that once thrived were now scorched or abandoned. Fleets that once ruled entire sectors were gone. The Dominion, once thought unstoppable, had been broken. On Earth, the human command center was quiet. Monitors showed star systems slowly returning to normal, but the scars of war were everywhere. Every red zone on the map was a reminder of loss and destruction. The captain stood at the front of the room. He looked at the stars through a massive viewing screen. Space stretched endlessly, beautiful and quiet, but fragile. An officer approached him. "The remaining Dominion forces are scattered," she said. "They're retreating into unknown space. They won't be a threat for a long time." The captain nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "But we can't forget. The galaxy will never be the same. And neither will we." Humanity had won, but victory carried a heavy price. Millions of lives were lost. Entire colonies were gone. The infrastructure of human space was in ruins. Yet, even in the destruction, there was hope. Humanity had survived the impossible. They had faced an enemy far stronger, and they had adapted, fought, and endured. Far from Earth, scouts reported scattered Dominion survivors hiding in remote systems. They had no fleets, no bases, and no chance to recover quickly. Humanity's dominance was established, but the captain knew better than to underestimate their enemies. "They will return someday," he said quietly. "And we must be ready." Across human-controlled space, fleets began to move. Not for war, but for rebuilding. Damaged ships were repaired. Lost systems were restored. Colonies that had been abandoned began to receive aid. Communication networks were reconnected. It was a slow and difficult process, but humanity was determined. On one distant world, survivors of the first attacks worked tirelessly to rebuild their cities. They shared stories of the war, of ships vanishing in flames, and fleets rising from nothing. Their children listened, learning that survival required courage, intelligence, and unity. Back in orbit around Earth, new fleets were constructed, not just for defense, but as a symbol. Humanity would not be caught unprepared again. These fleets were faster, stronger, and smarter than before. AI and human crews worked together seamlessly. Lessons from the war were etched into every design, every strategy, every weapon. The captain walked through one of the largest shipyards on Earth. Massive ships towered above him. Engineers and pilots moved among them, preparing for the future. The smell of molten metal and fuel filled the air. "This is what they wanted," a young officer said, looking at the ships. The captain looked at her. "What do you mean?" "They attacked us, destroyed worlds, but we survived. And now we're stronger than ever. They wanted to break us, but they made us better instead." The captain remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke.
"Yes.
"But we must never let pride blind us. Strength comes with responsibility." He turned and walked to the observation deck. Below, Earth glimmered like a jewel. Blue oceans, green continents, still alive, still holding on to life. "Humanity asked for peace," he said softly, "and the universe gave us war. But we endured. And from the ashes, we will rise." Across the galaxy, scattered Dominion forces watched silently from the shadows. They had been defeated, but they had learned something as well. Humanity was not like any other species they had conquered. Humanity did not surrender. Humanity adapted. Humanity survived. And the captain knew that if war came again, humanity would be ready. He turned back to the stars. Above, the void stretched endlessly, full of danger and possibility. Humanity had proven itself. They had fought, survived, and emerged stronger. They had stared into fire and returned. The galaxy was quiet now, but it was a quiet born of strength, not fear. The captain took a deep breath and looked around at his crew. "We rebuild," he said firmly. "We remember. And we prepare. Because the next challenge will come. And when it does, we will not only survive. We will prevail." Outside, in orbit and across the stars, ships glimmered in the light of distant suns. Planets slowly healed. Colonies grew. Humanity spread its influence, cautious but unafraid. A new era had begun. The war had ended. The galaxy had burned. But from the ashes, humanity had risen. And they would never be forgotten. The stars belonged to them now, not because they conquered everything, but because they refused to surrender, refused to break, and refused to vanish. They had survived the fire. And now, a galaxy reforged awaited them.